Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Bria Hudson, and this is Chapter 16, Unions and Healthcare Organizations. Let's start with what is a union and what is a unionization. A union is an organization formed by workers who join together and use their strength to have a voice in the workplace. Unionization is the act or process of bringing workers into a labor union, which is an organization for dealing collectively with employers. Through their union, workers have the ability to negotiate from a position of strength with employers over wages, benefits, workplace health and safety, job training, and other work-related issues. Unions also serve an important role making sure that management acts fairly and treats its workers with respect. So, can unionization be avoided? A close examination was taken on union organizing campaigns, and the results led to the following three conclusions. 1. Most organizing campaigns focus on economic issues. This happened when union emphasis on job security and quality of work life began to increase noticeably. Due to management indifference towards complaints, unions won their bargaining elections. Then, in the majority of union victories, anti-management sentiment initially arises from work conditions that include poor organizational communication or arbitrary or seemingly uncaring management. And lastly, in many cases, the anxiety produced by widespread lack of knowledge about what is truly happening concerning the organization's status and likely future provides a boost to the union cause. Many employers prefer to be loyal to their organizations, but organizations seeming indifference to upward communication can discourage said loyalty. The price of management indifference can be very high. If a union loses a bargaining election, they will continue to try and try again until they succeed. But when management loses, as it has been proven, when management won't listen to their employees, union organizers will. Then, three fundamental errors commonly committed by management in assessing the potential for success of union organizing efforts. First, there's a widely prevalent management notion that most reasons for worker dissatisfaction involve concerns for wages, benefits, and other economically related issues. Employee dissatisfaction will ultimately be expressed through a union in the form of financial demands. Second, many top managers automatically assume that all supervisors, those first-line managers of the people who perform the hands-on work, are on the side of management. Majority of supervisors come up from the ranks within the functions they supervise, and as such often remain an integral part of the same work group. Lastly, more often than not, nobody at the top of the organization has any solid idea of what, if anything, is really troubling the rank and file employees. It's not uncommon for top management to interpret the silence of workforce as indicating the absence of problems. This has been a significant error leading to union victories when top management was confident of union defeat. So now healthcare, more and more a special case. The total number of jobs available in the manufacturing sector of the U.S. economy has been steadily declining for a number of years as competition and the globalization of business caused the relocation of an increasing number of jobs to foreign countries. Manufacturing was long the source of most union memberships. However, as manufacturing jobs have been lost, the unions have shifted much of their focus to service industries. The service sector of the economy now employs more than 75% of the workforce. Thus, it comes as no surprise that many unions, having seen their membership dwindle for several years, have diversified and turned their attentions to the service industries. From the 1970s to the present, total union membership dropped while union membership in healthcare continued to increase. However, this percentage of healthcare workforce that is unionized is presently the largest it has ever been. Healthcare organizations represent fertile ground for union organizing and should continue as such for a number of years to come. In 1975, the National Labor Relations Act was amended to include hospitals and other healthcare organizations that had previously been excluded from coverage under the act. In 1975 also, unions were given new opportunities in the significant segment of the service economy. System growth and increased vulnerability. As hospitals and other provider entities come together to form health systems, these ever larger collections of what were once smaller organizations sometimes present larger and more attractive organizing targets. In other words, the larger the system, the more attractive it may be to an organizing target. Depending on the particular union that is interested in organizing within the healthcare system, the target group may be small and fairly well defined. Recognizing that hospitals needed to be treated differently from other kinds of businesses, specific rules were established governing the relationship between a union and a not-for-profit hospital. In 1975, the National Labor Relations Act was amended to bring not-for-profit hospitals under federal labor law. Prior to this time, only state labor laws, if any, applied to such organizations. What is of interest are the potential bargaining unions that apply to unions. A potential bargaining being a designated employee grouping that would be served by a union. Multiplicity of bargaining units. A major point in the congressional intent of the 1975 amendments to the NLRA was the wish to avoid numerous small units working with and bargaining within the same institution. However, in spite of this wish, in the middle to late 80s, the National Labor Relations Board moved decidedly in the direction of proliferation of bargaining unions by issuing new rules for determining bargaining unit boundaries in hospitals. The proposed rules were vigorously opposed by the American Hospital Association and other interests. The rule-making authority of the National Labor Relations Board came under legal challenge, culminating in April of '91 decision by the U.S. Supreme Court favoring the board. The decision of the 1991 officially established 8 separate bargaining units as appropriate in acute care hospitals. 1. Registered nurses. 2. Physicians. 3. All other professionals. 4. Technical employees. 5. Skilled maintenance employees. 6. Business office clerical system growth and increased vulnerability. 7. Security guards. And 8. All other non-professionals. From this, present rules, however, mean that a hospital of any size could conceivably have to deal with as many as 8 separate unions or a mix of a number of both larger and smaller bargaining units. The potential for communications problems. There are some simply described characteristics that govern much communication in complex organizations. The more levels there are in any organized entity, the more opportunities there are for errors to occur in information flow both downward and upward. Upward flow information is information from employees. This is generally weak for a variety of reasons and may be very nearly non-existent without deliberate stimulation to all levels of management. Horizontal dissemination of information is mostly information flow between and among system elements. It must depend more on conscientious communication between and among managers than on rules and procedures. In other words, the larger a system becomes, or for that matter, the larger a single corporate entity grows, the more opportunities there are for errors and omissions in communication. And take it as given that effective union organizers are skilled at seeking out and capitalizing such errors or omissions as a genuine weak spot that they often are. So now let's get into the supervisor's position. All managers, and especially the individual first-line manager, have an important role in keeping the institution union-free. If they, as in the employees, see the supervisor as unconcerned, uncaring, or indifferent, they're likely to view the organization as a whole in that way. The supervisor may indeed be the only member of this mysterious entity called management most of the employees know on a first-name basis or even know on speaking terms at all. The supervisor is a link that ties employees to higher management and thus to the organization. The supervisor's long-term behavior will have a great deal to do with whether this department is a fertile ground for union organizing activity, and the supervisor's conduct and actions during an organizing campaign will exert a significant influence on the employee's reaction to an organizing drive. As the employees see their supervisors, so too are they likely to see all of management in the organization itself. So now we have the organizing approach. First, there's leafletting. This is the distribution of union literature to employees at walkways, driveways, parking lot entrances, and are considered by some as the first stages of a union organizing campaign. When organizing activity actually begins, management may well know nothing about it. In fact, during the earliest stages, the union may take considerable precautions to prevent management from learning about their interests. The union may send organizers into the institution simply to loiter and listen and pick up what they can from conversations in the cafeteria, a snack bar, parking area, employee lounges, and other places where employees congregate informally. Infiltration is especially easy in an institution that does not require or enforce the use of employee identification badges or passes for visitors and vendors. Unannounced organizers will also attempt to pinpoint employees who have the potential to serve as internal organizers, especially for those employees who are popular, knowledgeable, or reasonably articulate, and in some way unhappy with the organization. If organizers believe the union stands a chance of succeeding, they will likely identify themselves to a few selected employees. This is actually when leafletting is likely to begin. The organizers will make every effort to develop a communicating relationship with your employees. This should sound familiar because the development of such a relationship is part of your role as supervisor. Unequal positions. Under the National Labor Relations Act, unions and employers do not have equal clout in the organizing process. If the National Labor Relations Board, ruling on an unfair labor practice charge, upholds the union's claim, then the union may be automatically certified as a recognized bargaining agent without the necessity of a representation election. Under the Act, an employer can commit an unfair labor practice, and such charges can be brought against the organization by the union. The law, however, does not work the other way around. For all practical purposes, there is no such thing as an unfair labor practice committed by a union. If the union should lose a bargaining election, it may petition for another election after 1 year has elapsed. The employer may well have to win year after year to remain union-free. The employer only needs to lose once and the union is in permanently for all practical purposes, because the certification of a union is difficult to achieve and occurs infrequently, to which this will be discussed later in the presentation. Now we have a manager's role. It is to the individual manager's advantage to be sensitive to the limitations these requirements in Exhibits 17.1 and 17.2 in our textbooks place on one's actions, decisions, and comments in dealings with employees. It is also to the individual supervisor's advantage at all times, but especially during a union organizing campaign, to know the employees in the group as individuals and know them well. Ultimately, a labor union has a little to offer if employees already feel that the organization is responding to their needs. Shifting ground rules. For years, it has been relatively accurate to cite the so-called TIPS rule in summarizing the most important elements of what a member of management could not do during union organizing. The TIPS rule is a manager cannot threaten, interrogate, promise, or spy. In the 1980s, the National Labor Relations Board loosened its interpretation of interrogation to suggest that it is lawful for an employer to question union supporters about their union sentiments as long as the questioning carries with it no threats or promises and in no way interferes with or restrains the employees in the exercise of their rights under the National Labor Relations Act. The bargaining election. The union, often working through both external and internal organizers, will go about the business of securing sufficient employee interest to allow it to petition the National Labor Relations Board for a bargaining election. This type of support will take the form of simple cards that employees will sign to indicate interest in having an election. Employees should be aware that signing a card is not an automatic yes vote for the representation of the union, but rather an expression of interest in having the election. When sufficient signatures are gathered, the union will petition the National Labor Relations Board. And the union needs to have signatures from just 30% of eligible employees to legally submit its petition. The board will sanction an election and a date for voting will be set. Election is by secret ballot, and all employees who work in the unit the union is seeking to represent are eligible to vote. If the union receives a simple majority of the vote, it will then be certified by the board as a legal bargaining agent for all persons who work in the unit. If the union fails to achieve a simple majority and various possible legal challenges do not upset the results of the election, the union will withdraw at least for a while if the vote was close, or perhaps a longer period if the results were clearly one-sided. So what happens if the union wins? Soon after, and often immediately after, the union is certified as a recognized bargaining unit, Negotiations will commence for an initial contract. The first line managers must learn the contract inside and out. They need to know, what does it say, what does it not say, why does it say what it says, and more. The presence of a union does not mean that supervisors can back off from active communications with employees and simply wave the contract at them. They should be honest, open and honest, in all dealings with the union and do their best to avoid any adversarial relationship with the union reps. And after all, employees work for the institution, not for the union. The union will be the employee's voice only if the employees feel they are not recognized as individuals and are not being heard by management. Lastly, we have decertification. Decertification is a formal process by which an employee group may remove a union when it is felt that the union and its leadership have failed to meet the expectations of the membership. The Labor Management Reporting Act of 1947 made it possible for employees to get out from under a union that no longer seemed to serve their purposes or be acting in their best interests. This change allowed employees to remove a union when its leaders failed to meet membership expectations through a process called decertification. A petition for decertification cannot be filed within a union's first year. A newly chosen union is given this period to negotiate a contract and demonstrate what it can do for its members. Management cannot be involved in initiating a move toward decertification. Managers cannot volunteer information to employees about how decertification can be accomplished. They cannot tell employees that they would be treated better without the union, nor can they suggest that employees generate a petition to decertify the union. During the initiation stage, management is legally permitted only to respond to employee questions about decertification. Supervisors cannot include any encouragement to pursue decertification. Should a decertification effort reach the petition stage, the employer can still do little more than respond to the employee questions. Once a decertification petition is filed and the decertification election campaign officially begins, management has options for its activities. Management may not interfere with the right of employees to choose between decertification or not. Neither promises nor threats that could upset the conditions under which employees are to choose may be made. Lastly, here we have the references for the chapter. Thank you for watching my individual presentation on Chapter 16.